Recording in progress.
Okay, we're about to start this meeting. Let's see, get the date right. Okay, I'm calling the April 13th, 2022 meeting of the Manitou Springs Planning Commission meeting to order. First item of business is, first I'll call the roll. Commissioner Armstrong?
Present.
Commissioner Latimer?
Present.
Commissioner Reagan?
Present.
Commissioner Casey?
Present.
Commissioner Wilson?
Present.
And I'm Commissioner Delwich. And so first item of business, we will do approval of the minutes of the March 9th meeting.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay. Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, that's 5 and 1 abstention. Commissioner Casey was excused and not there present. Next, before we start the meeting, I'll just describe what the process we follow is during a business meeting. And first of all, the chair will call an item for consideration. Planning staff will describe the applicant's request and will provide their analysis and findings based on the applicant's application. Following that, the applicant will have an opportunity to state their case and provide any additional information that they wish to provide to the commission. Planning commissioners may ask questions of staff or the applicant at this time. After the commission is finished with their questions, the hearing will be open for public comment from those in attendance. You'll be able to state your thoughts regarding the item under consideration at this time, and we request, especially with a large gathering like this, that you limit your comments to 3 minutes, and if you just want to echo what someone else says, just say that, and we'll note that. After all public comment has been heard, the chair will close the public comment portion of the hearing, and commissioners will deliberate and act on the item under consideration by voting to support or deny the item, or may vote to table the item. As a commission deliberates, they will be guided by the zoning and subdivision codes. We're not a legislative body. We make our decisions based only on our interpretation of whether the request meets the criteria in the zoning code. So before we start, are there any conflicts or ex parte conversations to disclose? Okay. So actually, before we start, I'd like a motion to move item 2 and item 3 to the front, to precede item 1, since they're going to be postponed. In case anyone's here for those items, we don't want them sitting around.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, that carries. So I'll start by calling up item 2, minor subdivision 2201, create 2 lots, 121 Lovers Lane, Jeffrey Myers, applicant. And item 3, subdivision waiver 2201, encroachment into non-build area, the same applicant and same address. So,
So Dylan Becker has an emergency tonight. So an hour ago, I was told to set this up. So the Jim Hook from Kimley Horn's here, and I was told he would handle.
okay.
Dylan's.
Well, okay, I'll just, state basically what the packet says is that these are going to be postponed until next month. So could I have a motion to postpone items 2 and 3?
Do we know why?
They were not complete applications.
I'd move to postpone items 2 and 3 until the next meeting.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, motion carries. So we'll move on to item 1, concept plan 2201. This is a concept plan that talks about a major development, major subdivision, vacation of right-of-way at 183 Crystal Park Road. William Gooman and Associates, applicant, on behalf of Manitou Cabins LLC, owner.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Jim Hauk. I'm with Kimley Horn, and I'm assisting planning staff tonight in their absence.
Could you state your address for the record, your residential address?
7855 Marriott Road, Cascade.
Oh, thank you.
As mentioned, this is a preliminary concept plan review. The applicant has requested to come before the body to present their ideas and their intent for a project. This is prior to any submittals to, formal submittals to city staff. As mentioned, this is a project is located at 183 Crystal Park Road. Maybe a better reference point, the old Cheyenne Village campus. As part of this process for the preliminary concept plan, excuse me, I had a little frog in my throat. A public notice was sent out. Applicants participated and saw that go through. There was then a submittal request for this meeting. And this is kind of outlined in your packet. So if there was any further questions, we can go into details if there's anything specific. The evaluation criteria is really about a preliminary discussion, voicing, inventing, I guess, ideas tonight based on the applicant's desire for the property, kind of exploring what it means from a code standpoint, but also from a development and neighborhood perspective. One thing that we do want to read into the record is limitations and recommendations. This is 18.2, 0.040 limitations, and this is within the code. Recommendations on the concept plan do not constitute a waiver of any required development or subdivision process at this time. Comments and recommendations made during this concept plan review process shall not be binding upon the city or the board. By by submitting a concept plan for review, the developer or applicant in this case waives any claims it may have based on the concept plan review at this time. So this is really simply for a review process of getting some general feedback from departments and from yourself. Ultimately, this would go through a formal process and then on through to Planning Commission and City Council at a different time. The next page in your packet was related to some early conversations that have taken place with Parks Department, Parks Advisory Board, as well as the Open Space Committee. There's been some recommendations posted there for review. Again, preliminary discussions, no formal actions at this point. There's also a table in there that outlines kind of fees and dedications as it relates to this project itself. And again, very preliminary, but a table to kind of give everybody a baseline of an understanding of how this is done. Open space is developed through a 5% gross acreage that would be platted at that time. And parks and open space is developed, calculations are based on a 9% gross platted area. And at the bottom of that table, you can kind of see maximums, dedications, and or fees provided here. This would be one or the other at this point. So about 1.2 acres, potential dedicated or some level of fee could be calculated here at the end of the day. Again, this is not about negotiating tonight. This is really just kind of a baseline information, help everybody build an understanding for the project and the opportunities down the road. Again, the next couple of slides are just alluding to some of the overview information that was provided from the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, looking for some dedications and some access. And I'm assuming the applicant will go into more detail as far as how that lays out on the property. And we can talk more about this if you'd like to as well. The next slide is Open Space and Advisory Committee, the same thing, looking for some dedications. One other thing that, before we get to this one, one other thing that popped up late this afternoon is Public Works has made a request to, well, not so much a request, but has looked at a potential discussion about some right-of-way vacation, and they've declined to take that action. They'd like to preserve the right-of-way as it is, and that's like another item I'm sure the applicant will talk about. This is for a small piece associated with one of the cabins along Crystal Park Road. So the next slide then was really, the last slide was to talk about just some other planning considerations as we move forward with this discussion. On-site parking, code requirements are things that we need to be considering as it moved, if this moves into a major subdivision application. Lot sizes, again, as the park dedications, landscape objectives, some replat considerations, and then also hillside slope and drainage considerations. So just things to kind of bring to the table to help with the conversation. Again, the idea is to get as many of the questions out tonight, let it kind of vent, and give the applicant the best information to move forward with. So if there's any other questions, I'm happy to help those. Otherwise I'll hand it over to the applicant.
Okay. Any questions before we move on? Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Bill Gooman. I'm a principal with William Gooman and Associates. We are the applicant and the lead planner for the Manitou Cabins proposal. And I handed each of you a copy of the slides that we've prepared to present to you this evening, so you can take notes as we go along.
Could you state your name, your residence address for the record, please?
My residence is 731 North Weber Street, Colorado Springs.
Thank you.
This is, as Jim Houck mentioned, a preliminary concept plan presentation for Manitou Cabins. It's at 183 Crystal Park Road, originally Cheyenne Village, and this is within the Keithley Log Cabin Subdistrict. Next slide. Our project team includes me, Bill Gooman. I have our lead planner and senior associate Ed Morgan here as well, in case there's questions that he's better equipped to address. Manitou Cabins LLC is represented by Taylor Stamp and Dale Stamp and Nancy and Marty Johnson.
Recording in progress.
Okay. And I'd just like to have the owners come forward and spend 2 or 3 minutes to just give you an overview of who they are and what their relationship to the project is, if that's okay. Sure. So,
should we stand? Sit or just you and I this one?
You guys can sit down and we'll go after you.
there.
So there's 4 of us here tonight. It's the Johnson and the Stamp.
Oh, excuse me, you need to be like within 3 inches of the mic and,
Like this?
yeah, good. And yeah, you can start by stating your name and residence address for the record, please.
Nancy and I'm Marty Johnson. This is Nancy. We live at 211 Crystal Valley Road in Manitou. We own the property under Manitou Cabins LLC with the Stamp family. And the Stamp family is right here, Taylor and Dale Stamp. They're our partners in the deal. We bought the property in January of 2021, and we've been working continuously with the city planning department, primarily Michelle, who retired a month or so ago, and now Dylan on this project. And we bought the project because we were very excited to be able to restore these cabins and get them back to what they used to be. They were pretty run down and still are pretty run down. We've had our ups and downs with the project, but we're pretty excited to be able to work on it and give a presentation tonight to show you what we're planning for the 9 acres there. Okay.
Okay.
And I'll just add, Marty and I have been in Colorado for close to 50 years, and for almost 40 years, we've been residents of the west side of Colorado and residents in Manitou, and we have deep connections to the area. We're not out-of-state developers. We've done volunteer projects here in Manitou over the years when our kids were young, and the same thing with the Stamps. They've been longtime Colorado Springs residents, and we have a huge respect and appreciation for this property. And it's kind of a love project, which is why we bought it. We really want it to be a special community. Our end result will be something that hopefully will be a huge plus for Manitou, and homes, small homes for individuals and families and stuff that will continue to maintain them for the next 100 years.
So Taylor Stamp, 1431 West Gutierrez, Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Okay, could you get a little closer to the mic, please?
Yeah, sorry. Do you need me to repeat that?
No, that's okay.
1431 West Gutierrez, Colorado Springs, Colorado. So yeah, one of the partners. I really, really love this project just because I'm a big historic preservationist myself. I would love to see many of these properties remain within the love to see these properties remain and be restored to their kind of former glory. We've seen a lot of properties throughout Colorado Springs get demolished, kind of all the historic past properties just kind of go away with the past. So I kind of saw this as a great opportunity to bring some life back to the property, make it beautiful once again. So.
I'm Dale Stamp, 715 Silver Oak Grove, Colorado Springs, Colorado. Moved out here in 1977. Worked for the City of Colorado Springs Park and Rec Department for 11 years. I have a degree in outdoor resource management from Illinois State University. I was the one that discovered this opportunity. Our favorite restaurants here in town is Adams Cafe and the Crystal Cantina. And I got Justin Armour back there. And usually my wife and I would go every Friday night to have drinks and dinner. And when the servers was waiting on us and I asked them what was going on across the street, and she said they were about ready to put the property on the market. For 15 years, we watched that property disintegrate and deteriorate, and we thought it was a great opportunity to put it back together. When we worked with Michelle, she was very excited that we were not going to demo these properties, that we were going to enhance them. And we're hoping that we can do that and reiterate what Marty and Nancy and Taylor said, that we're excited to do this project and make it a proud place for all of us to see and view, and be a great opportunity for people to have affordable housing in some respect that won't be as extravagant as things have gotten out of control. And we're hoping that with the presentation tonight that you guys will see some of the things that we're planning to do, and we'll embrace what we're trying to do. Thanks.
Great. Thank you.
We thought it was beneficial for you to see the faces that are associated with this project. And I'm pleased that both groups, the Stamps and the Johnsons, were able to address you, so thank you. Our project engineer, Respec, is represented by Rich Gallegos and Mark Ferraris, and they're both here. Just if there are any questions related to civil engineering matters, grading, drainage, whatever we've looked at, they'll be able to address that and answer any questions that you might have. Next slide, please. This is the first of several slides that we have here. How many of you have actually visited the property recently? Great. It's a unique place. And the next few slides that we have here are photos that were taken recently of the properties that we're hoping to rehabilitate and make inhabitable once again. So this just gives you an idea of the varied style. Most of the structures are of the log cabin type. However, we do have several that aren't. They were built in the 70s, and they're not representative of the log cabin style that we're trying to preserve, but we're hoping to renovate and keep those structures intact as well. The other photos that you see, this is Sutherland Creek, which bisects, we call the west side of the project from the east side of the project. The development is characterized by the log cabins that are on the west side of Sutherland Creek and the vacant land that we're proposing to develop with new construction on the east side of the creek. But these photos were taken last week, so they're pretty recent as well. But I'm glad that you've had an opportunity to visit the site. A lot of folks have not and don't know what a challenge it's been to take a property like this and bring it up to current code. Many of the structures that you see were built in 1925 and 1935, and they've seen better days. Most of the property or most of the cabins that you see here, you can't live in them right now as a result of the properties being vacated when Cheyenne Village was the owner. The property fell into disrepair. There are quite a few things that need to be done to bring these cabins up to current speed. The preliminary concept plan that you see on the screen is the primary reason why we're here this evening, is to present to you, first of all, the existing elements of the site. So arrow down. There are 2 lots that are proposed for new development in, not yet, but in the upper northwest corner. Jim Houck had indicated that there were some Park and Recreation Board and Open Space Committee recommendations. We received those today. And, you know, I have a caveat here that as a result of some of the recommendations that were presented to us today, that there may be changes to what you're looking at right now. It's a concept plan. Those 2 lots were proposed for new homes. Everything is within the historic district, so they would all have to follow the historic preservation guidelines for new development, which basically means that these would be of the log cabin style architecture as well. Arrow down. There are 21 existing cabins to be refurbished. 18 of those are to be refurbished, and 21 total structures are within the historic district. Work has already begun with roof repairs, sanitary sewer and water repairs, foundation repairs and replacement, just to mention a few. The cabins, as I mentioned, have been vacant and were in an advanced state of disrepair and decay when the owners purchased the property last year. Sutherland Creek will remain an asset to the property. That you see is what bisects the property from north to south. The existing mature trees that you've seen on site, the owners have already had a licensed arborist go through the entire property. We got calls, why are you chopping the trees down? We weren't chopping the trees down. We were removing dead trees. We were removing dead branches, many of which had fallen on the cabins and caused roof damage. So what you see out there presently, all of those trees will remain. Nothing's being taken down. The lodge that you see on the screen there, we realized that there is a considerable amount of community interest in the lodge. As far as using it or repurposing it, for small business use. We've had interest expressed from bakers who want to put a bakery in there, to woodworkers who want to put a woodworking shop in there, to sculptors and painters who would love to use the space for their arts and sculpting. The owners are evaluating this, and no decision has been made as to the status of the lodge. There is a new sidewalk that is shown that is going to be installed along Crystal Park Road. This is primarily to address safety concerns that were brought to our attention by our neighbors. Aerodyn. As was mentioned, no existing log cabin structure will be demolished. The refurbishing is in progress, and this began last fall due to concerns that several of the cabins might not have made it through the winter if we'd had a fair amount of snow. A lot of the roofs are out there in bad shape. You've seen tarped right now. There are tarps over these to prevent water damage and snow damage from occurring. So there's sincere interest to preserve what's out there because obviously if we have a good starting place, it'll be easier to do the refurbishing to make them inhabitable again. Aerodyn. There is a proposed pocket park for community use. It's got direct access from Crystal Park Road in the southwest corner of the site. Again, this is a preliminary location, and based on the input and recommendations that were presented by Parks and Rec and the Open Space Committee, the location of that might change, but for this presentation, we wanted you to see that we did have an amenity for public use on the property, and that's in the form of a pocket park. Aerodyn. This is the location that had been proposed for the pocket park. Aerodyn. That's a photo of the site. It's pretty well treed. Aerodyn. This cabin, it was never actually an occupied cabin that we can discern. It was built in 1925. If you've been out to the site, it's east of the creek. There were questions about what do you do with something like this. It's, again, in an advanced state of decay. The foundation is crumbling. Much of the woodwork needs to be restored, but there was also a reluctance, especially on behalf of the Historic Preservation Committee, to remove it altogether or demolish it. So what we're proposing, and this is a recommendation actually from a member of the community, is why don't you relocate that particular building to the Pocket Park location, and that's part of our thought process that's going on. If we leave it in the location that it's presently situated on, there are opportunities for it to be repurposed into a mail kiosk to serve the new homes that would be developed east of the creek. Slide down, or arrow down. This is the proposed site that we're looking to have you consider. Arrow down. There are 9 new lots that are proposed. It's difficult to read on the screen, but I think it's equally difficult to read on the handout that I'd given you. But the rectangles that are shown on the darker green lots indicate the lot number and also the square footage of the lots. Originally, we had proposed 15 new lots to be developed east of the creek. which is actually allowed under the city's current zoning district. Our neighbors told us, you know, we'd like to see fewer homes than 15. We think that that would be too dense, that would add to the traffic concerns that we already have. Would you consider something less than 15 units? And 9 is what we're indicating here, so there was a significant reduction. This amounts to 2.98 dwelling units per acre, which is well within the parameters of the LDR zoning district that this property is situated in. The 2.98 dwelling unit per acre density is very compatible with the adjacent Indian Hills and Stover subdivisions that would be on our eastern boundary and on our southern boundary. In most cases, I think in about actually 8 of the 9 lots, the lot sizes are appreciably larger than those in the existing adjacent subdivisions. Arrow down. We're proposing a new street. You see there, it's a cul-de-sac with direct access onto Sutherland. The alignment is something that the city had a lot of input in initially, so that it would align with Mountain View Road to the north, and that the arrows there are showing the alignment there. There's a building you see with an X through it. I'll refer to that here in a minute. It's not colored because that's a structure that is scheduled to be removed, and I believe that was constructed in 1985, so that it's a garage, it's not a residence. Traffic impact study was previously completed, which showed that there are approximately 25 additional vehicle trips per day that would be generated by the new development on the east side of the creek, which is minimal and will not require improvements to any existing streets, either to Crystal Hills Road or Crystal Park Road or Sutherland Road, and that is a recommendation from the transportation consultant and appears in the traffic improvement study, which is a part of your 486-page package that I know everybody read and memorized, so it is part of your package though. Arrow down. We do have quite a bit of existing vegetation on the slopes, and most of that is in the form of gamble oak. There are some nice mature stands of gamble oak that exist there. There's some mountain mahogany that exists there. We're proposing that if it does not have to absolutely be removed to accommodate new development, it won't. It provides a valuable function in that it stabilizes the slope between our property and the Indian Hills subdivision above. So all of the existing vegetation that is on the slope, the farther east you go, the higher up you go, will be preserved. I should mention also that the street that you see is intended or designated as a private street with a 45-foot right-of-way, a little bit narrower than what the standard requirement is for a public street. Our intent is to minimize the impact of the development on the vacant piece of land. Even though there is no historic significance of the roughly 5 acres, 4.9 acres that are vacant, there's a substantial amount of interest and visual interest, and we're trying to minimize the impact that new development would have on that property. I should mention to you that the owners do not have any intent to build the new homes that would be constructed on these 9 lots. They're not home builders. The lots would be sold to individual builders, or we've been contacted by interested parties that might consider taking down all 9 lots and have responsibility for developing the entire east side here. That's not been finalized yet. There are 3 non-historic buildings, Aerodyn, that include a garage and a shop. That's the large rectangular structure that I first indicated to you would be removed. There are 2 bungalow, non-log architecture type structures that are right to the east of the cul-de-sac that you see. There are X's that are drawn through them. These were constructed in 1967 and 1975. They have no historic value whatsoever. They're in a state of disrepair as well. Probably more expensive to try to rehabilitate those than they're worth at this point. These are proposed for removal. You also see where the existing cabin is indicated, south and east of the proposed road, the new road. That's the location that it's in right now, and that's where it may remain if it's repurposed as a mail kiosk. We showed in the lower southwest portion where the pocket park is proposed, where that cabin might be relocated if there's enough support from Parks and Rec and open space to move that cabin there. In any case, the cabin, which was built in 1925, is not going anywhere. There's no way the Historic Preservation Committee would consider that, and we seriously have not entertained any thoughts of demolishing it or removing it. It's an asset to the site. That concludes the presentation for the proposed portion of what we're wanting to do. The concept plan that you've seen is a product of over 1 year of work by the owners and the project team for Manitou Cabins, during which time a huge amount of public input was solicited. Many compromises and proposed uses were thoroughly evaluated and considered, and an economically viable way to preserve a part of Manitou's history was devised. Unfortunately, this historically significant property was allowed to deteriorate badly and has become what some in the community have called an attractive nuisance. The owners of the property, which you've learned include some long-term or long-time residents of Manitou, have taken a genuine interest in preserving this part of Manitou's history, as is evidenced by the improvements they have already undertaken on the property on many of the existing cabins. They've willingly taken on this project at considerable expense and risk without actually knowing if the city will finally approve our development plans. Many of our neighbors have told us they really love the property and want to see it preserved. Many continue to use it as their own private open space, and Cheyenne Village vacated it and abandoned it, but no one's actually taken a strong enough interest to dive into it, and no one's come up with a plan to restore it or preserve it for future generations to enjoy. Had the current owners not stepped in when they did, the property most certainly would have fallen into further disrepair or risked being condemned and perhaps even demolished, as is the case with many attractive nuisance properties. It's really amazing the property has not been vandalized more than it already has, and unfortunately, it's been subjected to some vandalism. Some of the historic architecture has been removed from the exterior of the buildings, and it's unfortunate because we'd like to keep those items there. Worse yet, it's amazing that it's not become a residence for squatters and the homeless, which could very well conceivably still happen if something isn't done with the property. If you've been out there within the past 2 weeks, you'll see the property's been fenced with the orange construction fencing. It is an active construction site, and it was recommended that we do fence the property to protect the public from falling into any open trenches that are on the site right now, but also to keep out would-be vandals on the property. It's a serious concern of ours right now. As mentioned, our concept plan proposes to develop 2 new lots within the log cabin subdistrict and 9 new large lots on the eastern part of the vacant land east of Sutherland Creek. We believe our concept plan demonstrates that new development can occur that is entirely compatible with existing surrounding neighborhoods in every way. Throughout our due diligence and our preliminary planning process, we relied heavily on the input from the community. Your package indicates that the owners and the consultants to the project hosted a neighborhood meeting late last year in the snow. Despite the weather, it was cold that evening. Over 100 neighbors showed up and toured the property. And we're really pleased to say that an overwhelming majority of those who attended told us they were very supportive of our efforts and that something would finally be done to preserve the property. The city's professional planning and development staff have also been very supportive in guiding us through what's become a tremendously complicated entitlement process, and this is largely due to the historic preservation requirements of what's out there, and that both the existing and the vacant portions of the property must adhere to. Plan Manitou and several other available resources were valuable to us and were used extensively to ensure we satisfied the intent of the city's planning code and ordinances, especially those pertaining to historic preservation. Lastly, we know that there are some who would still prefer to see that nothing is ever developed on the portion of the site east of the creek and would prefer to see the property remain vacant for use as private open space, all the while still advocating historic preservation of the existing log cabins. Puts us in a difficult situation. In order to recoup just some of the huge expenses of renovating the historic cabin portion of the site, developing the proposed 9 new lots is necessary, which we hope you'll agree, and that it's a relatively minor imposition when we consider the huge benefit of preserving Manitou's history to be realized and enjoyed by the entire community for what we hope will be quite a long while. That concludes the team's presentation, and I'd be glad to try to answer any of your questions.
Sure, I'll just start with one clarification. You know, I did read most of the packet, not all the traffic study in detail, but I did read all the narratives, and there were several places that referenced plans to opt out of the historic district. And I just wanted to clarify that that's just legacy from the plans prior to the council decision not to allow opting out.
The city council voted on this. There was a proposal to modify the district boundary, not to opt out of the historic district entirely. City staff and the historic consultant that was retained by the Historic Preservation Committee both recommended that the vacant portion east of Sutherland Creek had no true significant value. And the recommendation was that that portion, that 4.9 acres, be removed from the historic district. Council heard from the public, they heard from staff, and they heard from the preservation consultant. They didn't agree. So what you're seeing right now, the entire 9.03 acres remains within the historic district, and it will stay that way.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that that was just previous writing where it was mentioned.
Yeah, I did go through the package that the commission received. It actually is a chronology of everything from start to where we are now. I mentioned that this has been a process that's been ongoing for over a year. In the beginning, yes, there was consideration to modify the district boundary. That's no longer the case.
Thanks. Oh, anyone? David?
Could you tell me how, the approximate size of the new lots?
The new lots range in size from a small size of 9,900 square feet up to approximately 25,000 square feet.
Okay. I'm going to guess that you're aware that in the past there was quite a controversy over providing sidewalks further to the southwest. And, you know, that argument of public safety is a compelling one for sure, but some very committed neighbors and very well-informed expended a lot of time and energy defeating that proposal. And I think, you know, having lived just south of the Cabin area on Stover Lane, it's a semi-rural area, and I'm not sure how appropriate sidewalks are. I just mentioned that as one factor that I hope you've addressed.
Yes, Commissioner, and we had neighbors express their concerns to us as well. The existing cabins that are not going to be demolished and remain as is, there had been a traffic study prepared years ago, I believe, and there was a more recent one that was prepared as well that indicated what the average daily trip count would be. We are not exceeding what had originally been realized from that portion of the property. There is no sidewalk on the east side of the Crystal Park. Our original concept plan that we reviewed with staff did not propose to install a sidewalk on that side of the road. The plans that we just showed you right now do propose to put a sidewalk there, and that runs the entire length of the Cabin District.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Mike?
I appreciate that this is an upper level meeting when you don't want to get too far in the weeds, but what you gave us today is different than what was presented in our package. Not to a great deal, but it was. For example, what was presented to us was 15 proposed lots versus 9. So it's going in the right direction, no complaints. But just for future reference, the maps that you provided are there's like 9 of them or something, and it's all kind of confusing. What would be nice is for the next meeting, maybe a D size, a big drawing. Sorry, and and just really specify exactly, I can figure it out after a while, but the new lots, the existing homes, the ones that are going to be demolished, that's clear. And just like one big piece of paper with you know,
Certainly,
where the homes are proposed, et cetera, et cetera. And I was curious, the area south of the proposed park, it says, I can't even read it, Lewis additional lot, I think?
There's a little cutout right there.
Right.
And that is adjacent to the Lewis residence, which is the lot that is immediately south to that.
Right.
And Mr. Lewis keeps bees on that property, and he has asked the owners if they would consider selling what amounts to about 2,500 square feet to him so that he could continue his beekeeping enterprise there. So that's what that is.
So that's not part of your property?
It is. The Lewis property obviously is not. I mean, his home is there already.
Well, it says Dominic Van Euren.
I'm sorry, what?
The property owner says, it says Dominic Van Euren is south of that bee hive.
I'm having a problem
Me too.
reading. It's Lewis subdivision.
Oh, Lewis subdivision.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you. I'm just wondering if that could be, the park could be expanded and take over that property as well.
Well, as I mentioned, and as Jim Houck mentioned, there is brand-new information hot off the press that was presented to us today. It's part of your package from Parks and Recreation and from Open Space Advisory Committee, and they've got other ideas as far as where they might want a pocket park located. So the next version of the plan that you see, which will be considerably larger than what you have in front of you, will indicate what we've been able to negotiate with Parks and Recreation and with the Open Space Committee to ensure that we do provide what they're looking for. So again, this is a concept plan.
Sure.
Very much subject to change. But again, we've been working on this for just about a year now, and it's evolved considerably. As far as the information that's contained in the maps and the narratives, I mentioned that there is a chronology, and that goes back from, I believe, either July or August last year when our review process with staff began, and the plans evolved since then. So there is information that's old, that's incorrect. Now, staff put together your package, we did not, and they chose to include everything, which includes previous iterations of what we're proposing. The very last plan is what we presented tonight, and we're prepared, we're ready for it to change again based on any public input we get and also from the commission.
Sure. Well, I agree. It was confusing. Maybe you could include that data, but make it blatantly obvious that it's historical data, not what's being proposed. But I don't want to.
Yeah, we can talk to Dylan about that, I guess. I had nothing to do with putting together the package that you have.
But just to be clear, did you say that the whole property now is in the historic
Correct.
district? So, okay, so all right. Then with the covenants and the HOA that's in the package, is that covers all the property, all 9 acres?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what the dues will be? Have you talked?
I don't. I couldn't tell you what the pricing points will be for the homes. I couldn't tell you what the homeowner dues will be. The declaration of covenants that you have in front of you in your package, we were asked actually about 6 or 7 months ago when we began to prepare those declaration of covenants if they might use the Indian Hills subdivision declaration of covenants as a template to put together what you see there. So that for all intents and purposes, that is the final version of the covenants.
Okay. And then just real quick, based on the cul-de-sac road that you saw, I'm sure you have a plan, but I couldn't figure out how the homes south of that got out.
There are 2 flag lots that are at the end of the cul-de-sac. There are flag lots in the surrounding area, so we're not doing or proposing anything that's totally unique. It's a odd configuration for the property in order to develop the south end. The 2 lots that, and I'm sorry, I can't read the numbers of those lots. Those are flag lots that are accessed from the cul-de-sac.
Okay, okay. And then finally, just when you're talking about the park and the development thereof, is access to the creek an option for the park?
What we're understanding is the Open Space Committee and the Parks and Rec Board have requested for an easement in the vicinity of Sutherland Creek at Sutherland Road on the north side. So there will be an easement in that location to give the public access to the creek. We don't have a final configuration of what that access will look like.
Okay. And then lastly, just the parking is always going to be an issue, if you want to clarify that in your next presentation.
There's on-site parking within the cabin district that'll remain the same. There is parallel parking, existing parallel parking, and also head-end parking on Crystal Park Road. We're not proposing to remove any of the existing parking. Within the 9 new lots that are being proposed, we're following parking guidelines for the architectural portion of the city code that requires us to provide driveway parking, garage parking, and most likely because of the one-way or because of the private street designation, parking on one side of the street will be allowed.
Okay. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Hi, I just wanted to follow up and maybe clarify a couple of the responses to some of the questions for Commissioner Casey. In terms of parking and this road that's proposed to come halfway through the property, are you saying that the houses to the south that are proposed would park up there and they would have to be walking back and forth?
No.
So because it's not clear to me, and even in your response, it's not clear to me how people are going to drive to their driveways to those southern properties, to their garages.
I'm not following you.
Do you see the properties on the south that you want to develop in the south?
They front directly onto that road. So there will be driveways from the homes built on those lots to the road.
There'll be flag lots.
What do you mean by that?
There'll be long driveways. Some of the detail plans did show that. You know, the ones to the south have long driveways.
Okay.
Every home that's proposed on a new lot has direct driveway access to the street. You don't have to park someplace and walk, to get to your home. You have a driveway like you would in most subdivisions.
Okay. And then in terms of the creek, I understand that you were saying that there would be some kind of public access or something on the north side. Would that mean that the public would be able to walk through the property along the creek?
We've not finalized that yet. There are some discussions that still need to be had with staff and the Parks and Rec Board. Again, we just saw their recommendations to you today. I can tell you that there is access to the creek where it intersects or hits Sutherland Road. There is no proposed easement that runs along the creek, though.
At this point. And now, historically, people were able to walk along there. Is that right?
Yeah, the creek bisects private property, so there is a trail that's along there right now. I don't know what the history of that trail is or how it came to be, but it is not a public access. There's no public access there right now. That doesn't mean that there could not be in the future.
Right. So the precedent has been that it's been used in that fashion up until now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, just to clarify, in your parking plan, you designate 15 places along the Crystal Park right-of-way. Is it your assumption that somehow those are going to be dedicated to homeowners in the cabins?
The traffic impact study requested or required that there be that many off-street, or on-street, I should say, spaces provided in addition to what's being provided within the property. They're not going to be posted or signed or anything that says private parking for residents only. They're on a public street.
Okay, well, just a rough back-of-the-envelope calculation would indicate for the cabins, the requirement would be somewhere between 25 and 30 off-street places. So just, you need to be aware that would be a fairly significant variance to go that far, to not provide those off-street. And regardless of what the traffic study says, there is a process that we follow and an expectation. Like for a one-bedroom, you'd be expected to have 1.5 places for a studio, 1 place. A 2-bedroom would be 2 places. So I'm guessing it's somewhere around 30 spaces that would be expected. So there will have to be some rationale, which I don't know, and it's just something to be aware that anything like that may or may not be approved by the Planning Commission or the City Council, because that is there is an impact if we don't provide off-street parking for residential areas. Mm-hmm. Now another question I have would be, when I look at some of the drawings, it shows, I'm getting the sense, I just want you to clarify that the actual lot size for the cabins would be the footprint of the cabin themselves?
That is correct. The actual footprint of the cabin is the area that'll be platted that goes with that cabin.
And then all the rest of the space on the west side of the creek that's not individually platted would be common area?
Correct.
And that would be somehow maintained by a HOA.
Correct, and that's why we have the covenants drafted.
Okay.
At this point, we looked at this, and because of the way the cabin district was built out and allowed to be developed, we would have wound up with some really strange lot configurations to accommodate them. So with staff's input, the decision was made that only the footprint of the cabin would be platted.
And then the thought would be you'd go through a variance process for lot size.
Correct,
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Anything else at this point? Gloria?
Hi, Mr. Gooman.
Hi.
I'm wondering, since the owners of the property will not be the builders of these new units, when do you anticipate you'll have some information about architectural style of these units in a historic district?
I can't give you a firm commitment on a date for that. None of the lots are pre-sold, so we don't know who the builder will be. And as I mentioned, there might be 9 different builders. There may be one builder that develops all 9 lots. We don't have that information yet. I can tell you, though, we are bound by the historic preservation guidelines with regard to architecture.
Last one, I swear. Can you point out on the map where the right-of-way that the city denied today is?
I can. It's, you know, maybe, are you able to bring up the one slide? It'd probably be easier to see it on the screen than on the drawing in front of you. And yes, Commissioner, we will have boards to show when we come back again so that it'll be a lot easier to read. Yeah, can I point on, come up there and point on? It'll be easier to do this. Property number 41. This is the right-of-way line, or the right-of-way area. And you can see, thank you. This line that bisects the building, what we had asked for was to vacate this portion of the right-of-way. It's going to be very hard to sell a home that encroaches into a public right-of-way. And we thought we had agreement with Public Works that this would benefit them as well as the owners of the property, but in particular, if you were to consider purchasing that particular unit, you probably don't want to be straddling the right-of-way. But that's it right there, and you can see how the line bisects. And we have not had the discussion with Public Works yet as to what the rationale for denying that request was. Do I need to show anything else up here? Commissioner, if you wanted to know the driveway accesses on the road, here is a flag. Actually, it's right here that accesses the cul-de-sac here, and here is a flag that accesses this lot. This one accesses this lot. And all of these lots will have driveways right onto the street. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions for the applicant at this time? Okay, I guess for now you're done, and now we're going to open this up for public comment. And anybody who's interested can step to the mic and state your name and address for the record. State your thoughts.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Sure.
And I would just add, this is not a public hearing, this is a public meeting, so the chair is welcome to have your public comment come on, but it's completely voluntary.
Yes.
My name is Rebecca Monahan, and I live currently at 147 Crystal Park Road. In about a month, I will be 70 years old, so I'm going to be included in the historic district because my original address was 182 Crystal Park Road. My family, my uncles and aunts, owned McLaughlin Lodge. And I'm here because I'm very pleased with these people, what they're trying to contain it, and historically, I've seen it disappear with Cheyenne Village, and it broke my heart, what they did to it. It's my whole family, my cousins. My parents are dead, of course. My father built and maintained those cabins. So it's a very special place for me. And I'm happy to see that somebody is willing to put some time, some effort, and some money into doing this properly. And I hope that you, as the Planning Commission, And as the neighbors, we all support this. In a few years, those cabins are going to be gone. And that's going to be a tremendous loss for everybody. And the only other option I can see is townhouses. Somebody's going to buy that up at some point in time if this is not done, and it's going to be a bunch of townhouses because land is too expensive in Manitou, and everybody wants some of it. So if we don't cooperate and get this done, I think it's going to be a sad tale in the future. I just hope that we all pull together to help them do this.
Yeah, well, remember, it's just concept.
Thank you, Rebecca. Did you attend the meeting that the owners had in the last year?
No, I recently moved back here.
Okay.
I have not. I'm just trying to give them as much support as they can. And our family has a lot of information about what the cabins look like and pictures and movies and things like that that we can provide for them to historically make it look like it did in the 1940s and 50s.
Thank you. If anybody in the audience attended that meeting, I'd be curious to hear what you have to say.
I'm Shauna Hoey, 17 Craig Lane. This is a property that I drive by at least twice and walk by several times a week, so I have a big investment. I'm in favor of this project and the preservation. I love the idea of a bakery and keeping that lodge for community. And I had that idea on my own before I found out that was part of their plan, so I was very excited about that. I also agree with the statement of the lady that just came up.
My name is Barbara Pressler. My maiden name was Lowry. I live in 5210 Kissing Camels Drive in Colorado Springs. I'm cousin to Becky Monahan, and our family had a great deal to do with maintaining that property for our birth years, and we still live on Crystal Park Road, the Lowry family, via my cousin. So the fact that our fathers had such a great deal to do with Manitou as a city, they were involved in Chamber of Commerce and Boy Scouts, and it's important to keep a family name in a district like that. So I just want them to know that we support their efforts, because someone will come in and it'll be ugly, whatever they put. It'll be an ugly new development. So anyway, thank you, and please consider how much history. It's not just a building, it's a family, and all the good things that they contribute to the community and the businesses. And they stay. And that's what you want, I think, in a community. So, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Justin Armour. I live at 8 Crystal Park Place, just past the McLaughlin Lodge. I grew up on Sandra Lane. I could walk that Sutherland Creek down to the property. I made out with a couple girls in middle school on that property. I grew up in the late 70s and 80s, riding my bike through there when you could get through. I actually swam in the swimming pool before it was filled in in the late 70s. I've always kind of had an attachment to it. We used to buy sugar babies and milk duds at the little store that was down there. And obviously I saw it evolve, and 25 years later came back and somehow got involved in the historic building across the street that was built really at the same time. The Crystal Park Cantina was formerly the Mission Bell, and before that it was called the Tejano. And it was, the Tejano means Texan. It was a little depot to stop and get snacks, a couple tacos, kind of like a convenience store for some of the few places that were up in Crystal Park at that time. Tim Haas, a couple years ago, owns Trading Post, brought me a couple photos that are in the canteen. If you're in the front room, go look. There's Chief Manitou in the front of that building across the street. So I think they were able to stucco it maybe right before the Historic Society told them they couldn't. So I think that's why the canteen is stucco now. But I was involved in the beginning of this project. I was obviously pretty curious about it. What was going on over there. I've known the Stamps for many years. They'd come to the restaurant. He would always harass me, mostly out of fun. We always had a good time. But I got to know them. I know they're from here. And I think the team they brought together, I was part of the group that eventually initially talked to Michelle, about how we could do something that was meaningful and keep it how it was, but also do something that made it a worthwhile investment for somebody to do. I don't think it's a home run win project for anyone. I don't think that's the intent of these families that are involved. I think it's important to know that they're from here. And the fact that they want to blend this back into the neighborhood and really just add a couple more homes that are probably like the homes that are there now, and make it a place, frankly, the cabins will be in the affordable range compared to what other properties are going for in Manitou. So I think it will be a blended element there. And to drive up Crystal Park Road and to see those cabins restored would be something. There's very few acreages in this town, in this city, that have the kind of oak trees, and the presence of those trees are amazing. I've watched them clean them up and kind of lace them from the bottom up, and it's already looks better. But my concern is, if we delay these guys too long, if we just break their bank, at some point they are developers and they're gonna run out of money if we don't help them expedite kind of what they've done and where they've gotten so far. That was when I backed out of the project. When I saw the size of the loans that were going to be going down, I said, I'm out of here. But I think these guys are kind of like, if you live in this part of Manitou and you love that part of Manitou, I just can't imagine a better group of people, and I can't imagine a plan that is better than what they're offering. And so I'm just here to say that I really support it too, and I hate to see it sit there vacant for another couple of years, because there's a lot of looky-loos. We see them over there a lot. We move them out, frankly, a lot we have. But because they have workers come to do various things in the mornings, they tend to get them out of there too. But I fear what could happen down the road. It's an attractive place. It's private. There's a lot of private corners in there with the trees. So let's help these guys restore this beautiful property.
Thank you. Okay. Just a reminder, we're not approving anything tonight. We're just talking about the concept.
Rex Hoey from 17 Craig Lane. Previously, we were about 3 houses from Justin, so nearly across the street. I used to sit on a planning committee as well, a much larger city, but so I can identify with all of you. I just say we all need in this room to figure out how to come together and work this project, because I think it's worthy of everybody's effort.
Okay.
My name is Kathy Nims. I live at 9 Sandra Lane. So the backyard adjoins the east-south property. A lot of fireplaces were in the buildings, and I'm concerned about fire and older structures and also smoke. We have a property next door that has wood-burning fires, and the smoke does not dissipate. It's in a valley because the hills cause the smoke to settle. So I don't know, I have no idea how many fireplaces there will be, but that is a concern of mine. That I would rather, I know they've all been boarded up, but that's a good thing. Thank you.
Thanks.
Kathy, did you attend the meeting?
I did. It was during COVID, no vaccines, and it was cold, and we were in a room, and people kind of didn't stay that long, and it was a rather difficult meeting. So, and it's not for anyone's responsibility, but it was hard to get information there.
If anybody else would like to speak, just step up to the mic.
Dale Stamp, again, you already got my address.
Let's, we'll give you a wrap-up period if you're the applicant, and just,
So I can come back later?
yeah, we'll just let everybody state their thing, and then we'll let you come back. And maybe nobody else is going to speak, Dale, so I guess you can come on back.
I just had a quick question. Alan, I've seen at the city council when there have been public comments that the mayor has asked the audience to raise their hand if they're generally favorable or not. I just wonder with this number of people whether that would be useful to have an impression.
Now let Austin speak.
I'm not sure that's appropriate, to be quite honest with you. I'd prefer we didn't.
Is that the same for the mayor too?
Yeah, that'd be my advice there as well.
Yeah, we sort of talked to the mayor and encouraged him not to do that, and he stopped.
Yeah, there's a handful of reasons why I'd recommend we didn't do that, which we can go into later.
Okay.
My name is Mark Zapel. I live at 1330 Indian Oaks Place, and my property does border the development. And you were asking if anybody was at that meeting, the first one the developers had, and I did attend that. And it was pretty discombobulated, to be honest with you. And when the developers did show us the initial platting they had those 20 lots. And everybody in Indian Oaks Place was dismayed by that. And the fact that the developer has come and in these new plans is only talking about 9 lots, but we're in the hill, directly above where this development is going to be. And so it was 20 lots, and they all look like railroad cars. And it was awful. And that was the consensus of the opinion of everybody that I knew that lived around there at that time. And like I say, the 9 lots seems a little bit more palatable. But the biggest concern of everybody, and it's not Indian Hills, it's Indian Oaks. Mr. Gooman said Indian Hills about 10 times, it's driving me crazy. It's Indian Oaks subdivision, and that's apparently, when they do the covenants, it's going to be patterned off of our covenants, which I think would be a very positive and a very good thing. But the biggest concern of all the Indian Oaks subdivision people that I have spoken to is going to be you people here enforcing your hillside ordinance, because our homes are directly above where they would be digging into that hillside. And if there's a drainage problem, if there's any engineering problems, whatever geological studies they have to do, those are critical to our future. So I'm entrusting you people as a fellow Manitou citizen to do your job and make sure all of those hillside and geological surveys are done properly.
Sure. Just to reassure you, any encroachment into the 30% slopes will require a subdivision waiver, and they're not just
like this?
they're not just given. Yeah, there will be a public hearing, and there has to be compelling reason and minimal encroachment. So
I think it affects not only ourselves, but I know that hillside because I walk it all the time. When we get a big rain, it's like a waterfall coming down there. So those new homeowners down there, they will also be affected as we walk.
Yeah, any encroachment into the steep slopes would require a waiver and a public hearing, so you will have plenty of chance to weigh in and express your concern.
We'll be keeping close attention.
Sure.
Thank you,
Okay.
Alan.
Okay. Dale, do you want to come back up now?
Just want to tie up a couple loose ends and some comments and things like that. The big elephant in this room is the cost of this project. It's public record that we paid $1.220 for this piece of property. To renovate this cabins, we got a bid from T-Bone Construction, is estimated between $2.6 and $3 million. We just recently got information that Parks and Rec, Open Space, want to increase and do some parks and open space, which will take away considerable amount of some lots in our property. We have the serious issue of the public walking through our property on private land. It's been, the people do that constantly until we put up the construction fence to help deter that. And this is a private community. Yes, we want to keep it open as best we can to the public to use it and admire it and appreciate it. But then there's going to come to the point where we won't be able to afford it. And this has been a project going on for 18 months. And we have had so many setbacks. We are told one thing from the city, and then it changes, and then we get a thought that we are going to have this, and then it's changed. Then all of a sudden, Park and Rec, Open Space, last second comes on board, and out of nowhere, we think we have a deal, and it changes. Our option is, if we can't put this project together and save these cabins, we'll pay off the mortgage, and we're just going to let it sit there and land bank it, which is going to be sad. And if it comes to a numbers game, we don't know what to do. But this has just been one unbelievable project. We are not big-time developers. We're nice people. Somebody brought up about the piece of land for the beekeeper. We says, hey, we can figure out something so you can keep your bees there. We're good neighbors. I don't know how many other developers would do that, but some guy comes to us and says, we want to, have my place so we can have my bees, and let's work something out. Okay, we'll do that. We're just not negative people. We're optimistic. But I hope you guys understand it's getting to the point it may not be cost feasible, and it will just sit there. And some of the people who spoke earlier really appreciate their comments and positive things, and knowing the history of how that property has been and what we can do with it again. But again, time is running and time is against us. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we've heard, we've expressed. Oh, Shannon.
Thank you, guys. Shannon Solomon. I'm the chair of the OSAC committee. I just wanted to point out.
Could you name and address for the address
600
for the
Crystal
record?
Oils Boulevard, Manitou Springs. I just wanted to point out for the record, this OSAC thing and the Parab thing is not a surprise. It's been in the ordinance forever. Every subdivision has to do it. That's all I wanted to say. If you guys have any questions about it, I'd be happy to answer them. But I wanted you guys to know this is not a surprise. It's been there since the beginning.
Yeah, sure, thanks. Right now, we're not deciding anything. We're just expressing, giving feedback. That, we don't want to, give the wrong idea to the developers. We want to let them know what everybody's concerns are so they can go forward and have some confidence that, they know the process and have expectations. They'll hear our expectations as we form a motion, and we've heard from you and from the public, and so that's all going to factor in to what they do and how they approach it.
Of course, it's just hard to hear people talk about it being a surprise. So, thank you.
Sure. Yeah, the open space,
And Alan, I would just point out that tonight we won't be having a motion on this item because it's not a quasi-judicial agenda item. So once discussion's over, you can just close the agenda item and move on.
Okay. Okay, we can just, final comments, I guess. Any thoughts?
Just final comment. I appreciate the pain in your voice, but there's no such thing as a smooth development. But just, we're here to support you guys. And to be honest, before I walked in, I was expecting some opposition, and I haven't really heard anything. So it sounds to me like the whole group, this room, is fully behind you guys. And I wish you success. Our job is to help you succeed.
David?
Yeah, keying off Commissioner Casey's comments, I'm a little bit stunned. Oftentimes, I sit up here and it can get adversarial, and sometimes for good reasons, sometimes for what I would not consider quite such good reasons. But I want to thank Mr. Gooman, the Stamps, the Johnsons, and the neighborhood. It's quite an encouraging project in many ways, and I certainly wish you success as well.
I think that it has a lot of potential too. There are many exciting elements, and I join my fellow commissioners largely in what they're saying. I would add one caveat. I guess that I think that our job is up here is to try to help further the very many different interests of our communities, including the owners of the property, but I would also say within the confines of the code. And so it's not that we have the prerogative just to wave a wand and say, well, we like this, and so we can just ignore everything in the code. We actually have a responsibility. That code was developed over a long period of time to try to protect the interest of the entire community. And so I feel positive. I'm happy to have heard what I've heard across the board tonight. I just want to have realistic expectations about how we move forward.
Okay, I'll just, my final thoughts. In the code, it basically says Planning Commission shall evaluate the plan by considering whether or not the concept plan is consistent with general purpose and intent of this code. Proposed land uses, densities, and intensities are consistent with Plan Manitou and applicable zoning districts. Proposed development is consistent with the dimensional design, development, and all other standards of this code, and the proposed development provides adequate mitigation for anticipated adverse impacts to surrounding neighborhoods and the city. So I think we've seen there's already been a lot of evolution in the plan, and I think, it's very consistent with Plan Manitou to preserve historic parts of Manitou. So that's very positive, and it's consistent to provide housing. We're desperately needing housing. Moderately priced housing is essential. And I just think, the things that we all have to be aware of are the fact that this is a very challenging project, and it's pushing the bounds of density, parking, off-street parking, and challenges of developing on a hillside. And this all brings up the fact that there will likely be need for parking, density variances, possibly setback variances, subdivision waivers, and all that is achievable, but it really needs to be stated that it's not guaranteed that all requests by the developer can be met. So it's a process, and we'll be seeing, you know, as we go forward, those will be the challenges that we all need to be aware of. But I definitely think we're on the right track with the way this project is going. So that's my final thoughts. And I guess if there are no more comments, then we are at the end of our meeting. So meeting is now adjourned.